Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, my name is Tina Fornwald. I am the founder of Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, and I'm going to have a conversation with you today regarding different questions I've received from people. And the overarching topic today is the things I want you to know about a widow. So to keep myself straight, and I don't have anybody asking me questions, I have a list right here. So we're going to go down the list, and I'm going to share some things with you from my perspective. And I understand that everyone may see this from a different vantage point. I'm sharing with you from my lived experience and conversations that I have had with hundreds of widows over the last few years. First of all, what I want people to know about widowhood is that grief is a journey. After 1 year, grief continues. There is not something magical that happens after 1 year that you should think that your friend, your family member that is grieving their spouse, that this grief has completed itself. What may happen within that first year is they may no longer be dealing with a grief fog or a grief brain. And you may say, what is that? When a person experiences a great loss, they can often have trauma in their brain. And that will show up that the prefrontal cortex in the back of the head and the amygdala is operating differently. I know for myself that first 6 to 9 months, my brain was protecting me from the reality and the full trauma that Mark had left this world. And what that did for me, I was operating in a fog. I was not my normal self. I felt like I was floating through and watching my life go as I was also a part of it. And when I look back at that first year and I ask different friends and family members what they remember, my vision is cloudy. And I know that that is part of the mechanism of this body to be able to help protect me in that trauma. So, yes, in that first year, they may have moved past that grief trauma, that grief brain, that grief fog. But rest assured, there is more grief ahead of them. And I say that to validate my widows and widowers and people who are grieving, and also for people who listen to this video who are supporting others who are grieving. And they want to know what is behind that veil that they may not be given privy to know and to understand. But please know, this is a life journey, and they need you. They need you as long as you know that that person is no longer in this world. It doesn't stop after 1 year. The complexity of it changes. I am in year 7, and just recently I received some documentation that required me to have to provide my late husband's death certificate, birth certificate, our marriage license, and his DD 214. Seeing all of those in one sentence is more than a notion. Having to open up my safe, find these documents, and think about Mark's living and Mark's death. It has catapulted me back into thinking of things that I have not thought of in a long time. It has made that grief return in a heavier and a different way. I'm still able to function, but I know if this would have happened in that first year, baby, I would not. It would be different. But I do know there are still things happening in my life that allows my grief to resurface. And I want you to know, 1 year, it's not over. The second part that I want you to know is a part of a spouse's confidence their assurance, and their identity has been wrapped up and connected in their marriage to their spouse. When my husband passed, I literally had to practice saying my name alone. I had said Tina and Mark for so long. I literally had to practice saying Tina without something after it. It was hard. It was hard to think about who I was if I was not Mark's spouse. It was hard for me to think about who I was as an individual. What were my goals? What were my life aspirations if they were not tethered to Mark's existence? And I did a lot of work. I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of introspective looking at Tina and seeing, who am I? What is it that I enjoy doing? What gives me pleasure? What do I not like doing? And literally, my identity was sometimes understanding I don't like grape jelly. I had it in the house because peanut butter and jelly with Mark and the kids, and they like grape jelly. But I found out I like orange marmalade, and that's okay for me. But it literally took me in the grocery store consciously choosing not to purchase things that I purchased on rope and to look for things that were different. Do I like going to bed earlier? Do I have to have meat with every meal? Do I prefer going for a walk versus when I can drive? What do I want to do with my life and my career? All of those parts of my identity was something that I now had to figure out without Mark. And it was a strange place to be in because I never considered a world without him. And that was tiring and exhausting. In the throes of his death, and then for me to also consider, who am I without him? It was hard. It was something I did not want to do. The next thing I want you to know about grief is I will never be the same person I was when Mark was alive. And I'll dare say to my fellow grievers, widows and widowers, that you are no longer the same person that you were when your spouse was here. And the reason being, who I was because of who I was with Mark. Who I am as Tina without Mark is not the same person. And that's okay. It's okay to the reality that who you were, that version of you, was the version that was with your spouse. I was 18 years old when I met Mark Fornwald, and I was 51 years old when he left this world. I evolved into the woman that I am because of Mark and the relationship that we had, the things that we talked about, the plans that we made, the way we walked through life together. When Mark was no longer here, that connection, that relationship no longer existed. So I could not show up in life in the same way in which I did with Mark. I still show up in life, but this version of me is not the version that the world had when Mark was alive. And that's okay. This version of me is wiser. This version of me is more compassionate. This version of me has a listening ear and understands having empathy for someone in a way that I never did before. But oftentimes, a widow or widower will hear someone say, I miss the old you. And deep down inside, we want to say, so do we. We do miss the old you. We would have preferred to been the old us, but that's not the hand that we were dealt. We are doing our best to make it at the version that we are now. And I encourage you to help the person that you are supporting to understand, I know you can no longer be the person that you were, because the person that you were was tethered to your spouse. In this version of you, I still love you. And for the person that is grieving, I ask you to give yourself permission to love yourself now. The version who you are was built off of that relationship. It was built off of who you were with them. And who you are now in your individuality is good enough. And I want you to give yourself permission to be okay. The next thing that I want to share with you, that me as a widow, I am a better person today because of loving my late husband. It hurts. It is sad sometimes, Mark not being in this world, but I know a part of him lives within me. I raise our children, or I should say, parent them because they are adults. But I parent our children based off of the wisdom that I received from Mark. My ability to sit in spaces and be quiet and watch and observe a room comes from Mark. I carry the wisdom that he has placed inside of me that I watched over the years of our marriage. The things that may have ruffled my feathers now, they don't. Because honestly, I can tell you when things get super tough, in my head, I may not say it out loud, but I'll say, did somebody die? If they haven't, we can live to do this another day. We can resolve whatever the problems are and look at that. There are so many times where people are all wound up, and I'm thinking, nobody died. We'll be able to figure this out. We have space to still work on this. And that wisdom shows up at work, in my parenting. My daughter sometimes will say, Mom, you just don't get fired up like you used to. And I'm like, I will save my energy for something else because what I have learned, life is short. And I want to make sure that I am living this life that I have to the fullest capacity. And sometimes that means not giving energy to get riled up for things that have no value for me. The other thing that I want you to know about a widow is we will always miss our spouse. And I can dare say that even goes for my widows and widowers that had complicated relationships, where there may have been abuse, where there may have been substance problems. They will miss the expectation and the desire for the spouse that they never were able to have, unfulfilled expectations and dreams that were not fulfilled. In cases where the marriages were healthy and the people were happy, I will miss Mark forever. I thought we were going to grow old together and live this life where we were in two scooters or walkers. But he left this world before me. And I will forever, ever miss Mark Fornwald. There is not a day that goes by that I do not think of him in some form or fashion. I will never forget him. We are 7 years into this journey. And I would dare say 50, 60 years, 70 years later, how much life gives me, there will be a part of me that will always miss Mark Fornwald. And I am so grateful to my family and friends that give me space to miss Mark Fornwald and never tell me, aren't you done talking about him? Aren't you done mentioning his name? Because I know there is a large community of people in the widowhood that do not receive that validation, support, and acceptance from their family and friends, where they have been told, it's been a year. Aren't you done talking about that? It's been 8 months. Haven't you moved on? And they are crushed inside because the people around them do not have the emotional bandwidth to support them in the way in which they need. And that is why I want to share with you that we have a grief discord where a community of widows and widowers are coming together, sharing their stories, providing encouragement, because community is healthy and community is necessary in this journey of grief. And it's so important to be around people that understand what you are going through, not in a brief trauma bonding way that is unhealthy, but in a way that provides support and encouragement for you to continue on with your particular grief journey. The next thing that I want you to know, getting married does not solve the grief journey. Let me say it again for the people in the back. Dating or getting married does not solve your grief journey. It does not. We cannot plug and play one person in and out of our life. If you try to do that, I am most certain that it will not work well. I speak with widows and widowers, and they say, I want to find somebody just like my spouse. I want somebody with their personality. I want to be loved like they loved me. Going back to the beginning of this, we are in this situation because the person we love, and I mean current tense, we still love them now, is no longer in this world. And I encourage you, if you are trying to plug and play or let dating or getting remarried solve your grief journey, I want to let you know it's going to be a fail most of the time. What I do encourage you to do is to learn how to date yourself. Learn how to take yourself out to eat. Learn to take yourself to the movies. Learn to take yourself to a park. Learn this version of you. And I ask you to do that because you're healing. You're coming to peace with the reality that they are no longer in the world is the first place to start. This is an opportunity to nurture and cultivate a relationship with yourself. In time, you may be in a place that you want to spend your life with someone else, to spend time with someone else. But I ask you to make sure where you are mentally, physically, and spiritually is equivalent to the place that you would want somebody to present themselves to you. So if you're thinking, I just want to have my new person, let me encourage you to first think about dating. Dating is a lot of work. Dating requires you to connect with people, maybe one at a time or multiples at the same time, learn about their likes and dislikes, understand who they are as a person, understand who you are in their presence, understand if they're willing to have a relationship in terms that you are comfortable with, understanding someone's faith and how it impacts a relationship, understanding how to get close, thinking about holding somebody's hand again for the very first time, to kiss them, to be intimate with them. What does that dating experience look like for you? Oftentimes, I find that widows and widowers, we want to get to the good part, the part where we have this relationship and they know us, but that is built up over time. So please know, dating and getting married will not solve your grief journey. It may make it more complicated because there's rejection sometimes involved in dating. There's so many different emotions getting ghosted. So please be careful before you have the concept that dating will solve the widow journey. But in regards to dating, I recommend that you check out my YouTube channel because every Friday I put out a dating tip as being a widow. Yes, I have dated. Yes, I have remarried, but that was not where I started immediately after my husband passed. And there are valuable tips that you will be able to enjoy. So going to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina on YouTube and look for the playlist Best Dating Tips in 2024. These tips, I'm sure, will provide you with some gems in the dating experience when you're ready. The next thing I want to share with you, my children are who they are because of their dad. And I cannot parent them exactly the same way that Mark did. My children will have a life without their dad, and we will grieve his absence together. My children will have new life experiences that will not include their dad, which will make his absence even more a reality. And that is okay. And going back to the idea that the grief journey is not over in the first year because life continues and we continue to have experiences in life where the person we love is absent from those experiences. And we have to give, not have to, but I highly recommend that you give your children and other family members the space to grieve the same loved one the way they grieve. The way I grieve my husband is different than the way that my children grieve their father. I should not assess, dictate, or try to control how they grieve their dad, but I should give them space to be able to miss their dad on their own terms and be there to support them. I can tell you in I want to say the first 4 to 6 months after Mark passed, I was out of it. And I remember looking back at the text thread between my children and I and seeing all that gap, no communication, because I was struggling to keep my mind together. And I had no parenting, love, advice, space, capacity to give them. In about 6 or 9 months, when my grief fog lifted, I reached out to my children and I told them, I am so sorry that I was not there. Your dad died, and I was emotionally trash and didn't have anything to give. And I asked them to forgive me because I'm sorry I didn't have anything to give to them because I was barely holding on myself. And they did. They forgave me. And it taught me that who I am without Mark, they are somebody different without their dad, too. And they have the right to grieve their dad on their own terms. I should support them, love them, and encourage them, but let them know that it's okay to not always be okay. The next thing that I want to share with you, I can love Mark and my current husband at the same time. It is possible to have two great loves in your life. Fred does not resolve my grief with Mark. It's just that I had space in my heart to love someone else, to love Fred for who he is. And my love for Fred does not diminish my love for Mark. In fact, I've come to the conclusion recently that I actually love Fred in a deeper, more intense, and harder way than I actually love Mark. My love relationship with Mark started when I was 18 years old. And in this span of reality, it ended when I was 51. Over the course of that time, I learned so much about relationships. I learned so much about who I was and how to support somebody else. And now, 7 years later, after Marcus passed, in this relationship with Fred has blown my mind. How sensitive, how encouraging and supporting I can be to someone else, and how fragile I know relationships and life is. Or are. Which one is it? I now know how fragile our lives are and how quickly it can be over. And so I know that I love Fred in such a way because I really understand. I don't know how much longer I will have with him because I know life is fleeting. And because of that, my love for Fred is deep because I am amazed to even have a second opportunity of love. I love both my children equally, even though they would say something different. But I know that I have the capacity to love. And that duality of loving Mark and loving Fred can exist simultaneously. I do not have to choose one or the other. The last thing that I want to share with you, that it is possible to move forward and be happy in this version of your life. Some people may never choose to date. That's not a criteria, but learning to fall in love with ourselves, learning to embrace who we are, learning to know that we are resilient, that we have had the capacity to fulfill. One of the things that we made a vow to do, we vow till death do you part. Unfortunately, our society sort of makes widows and widowers like somebody that should be swept away into the corner and we hushly talk about them. But I say we should be celebrated, we should be honored, and we should be put on a pedestal and shown as an example of what commitment looks like. We fulfilled a vow that we made before people, and we said, till death do you part. I should be celebrated and honored for being able to do that, not be pushed aside and put in dark clothes and put in a corner that I can no longer express and share my emotions. This is a journey that other widows and widowers want to hear, because the goal is to be in my position. And if you can be in this position and learn something from what I share and other people on this platform share, you will be stronger in this journey. So I encourage those who are supporting widows and widowers to celebrate them. Encourage them to share how they feel. Encourage them to express their emotions. Do not try to hush them away. Do not try to overcompensate when they're crying or when they're upset and you feel a little uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, how uncomfortable do you think they are when they have to go to bed at night and look at the other side of that empty bed? When they have to eat dinner, breakfast, and lunch at a table that they once shared with their spouse? When they get into a car and they drive, and in that vehicle, they think about the life that they had with their loved one. These are the memories that we cherish as widows and widowers, and we are to be celebrated. And I encourage you, in all that you have accomplished, to continue living. Find out the things that you enjoy to do. Maybe you wanted to travel to all of the state parks in the area in which you live. Maybe you decided that you were going to start being a pen pal. Maybe you wanted to start crocheting. Maybe you wanted to learn to play a new musical instrument or learn a different language. You are alive, and I want you to live. I want you to celebrate every moment of life that exists, to know that your life is valuable, that you are worth living, and you are worth celebrating all that you are and all that you have done. I appreciate you being here with me on Widowhood Real Talk with Tina. Today is October 31st, and we are almost wrapping up 2024. And I am excited about what 2025 holds for the widowhood. I encourage you to check out our next event, which is Dealing with Grief During the Holiday on November 9th. It is on Eventbrite, and you can purchase your ticket for just $30. It will allow you to be in this event for 90 minutes. You will have a 60-minute session with a mental health professional. We are limiting the rooms to only 8 individuals, so you'll have an opportunity to interface with the mental health professional, because grief during the holiday has a different feel to it. Even if you don't celebrate all the different holidays, the atmosphere changes. We are starting to move into a time where it gets darker sooner, and we're dealing with a lot of things without having that direct vitamin D. A lot of people are fa la 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 la, and you may not have any fa la la in you right now. And there are coping skills, there are things that you can learn that will help you manage the holidays. So I encourage you to check out this event. I also ask you to share with me different topics, or maybe someone that you would like me to interview on our podcast. I want to say thank you for being here with me. And I also want to thank all of you who have donated financially, because Widowhood Real Talk with Tina is a registered 501c3, and we are established to support the bereaved. And it is because of your financial support that we are able to continue doing what it is that we're doing. So as we also roll into Giving Tuesday, I ask that you would consider further donating financially to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, or sharing or asking a friend or family member to support this organization, because we are supporting you. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.